I'm going to be telling the entire story of Little Nightmares. The games came out in this order, but I'll be going through them chronologically, which is in this order. 4 characters, 4 stories. Let's start with the story of the girl in the yellow raincoat in Very Little Nightmares. The game takes place in The Nest, a mansion on top of a rocky cliff. The girl in the yellow raincoat wakes up in her hot air balloon, which has crash landed into the nest. After going through the attic, the girl sees a kid named Six, who quickly runs away after being seen. The girl encounters the craftsman, and it's heavily implied that he's been crafting dolls out of live children. She manages to free a kid from a cage, but sadly, the kid gets turned into a doll, as we will see later. The girl successfully eludes the craftsman while going through his workshops. She makes it to the living quarters of the nest, where she encounters the butler, who uses his telekinetic powers to hover around and carry out his chores. Six is occasionally seen wandering about, trying to escape on her own. Further into the living quarters, we meet the Pretender, the supposed owner of the mansion, and she's having a tea party with her dolls. The Pretender is seemingly very lonely, so she had set up a bunch of dolls in various rooms to give her the illusion of company. At the mansion's foyer, she yells at a doll before angrily dragging it outside. That particular doll was the kid that the girl rescued earlier. When the girl exits the mansion, the butler starts to chase after her. While running away from the butler, the girl happens upon Six again. The two of them briefly cooperate to escape, after which Six runs off on her own. The girl makes it to the cliffside where she sees the Pretender mourning the loss of her doll. The Pretender starts to go after the girl down a very tall cliff. While getting away, the girl saves Six from falling to death. To return the favor, Six pushes a boulder onto the Pretender. But the Pretender somehow survived. So the girl and the Pretender fall into the water, and the girl's raincoat floats to the surface, confirming her death. But we see that Six survived the journey. We're going to be seeing a lot more of her. So that's the end of Very Little Nightmares. Let's move on to Mono's story in Little Nightmares 2. After having a dream/vision of a door marked with an eye symbol, Mono wakes up in a forest next to a TV. He finds a cabin and gets into the basement where a music box can be heard. Mono breaks into the room where he's introduced to Six. Mono reaches his hand out to her, but she pushes past him and runs away. Six goes upstairs and tries to reach a handle to open the attic. Realizing that she can't reach it on her own, she decides to team up with Mono. The two of them grab a key from the attic and use it to escape the cabin. They alert the hunter, the owner of the cabin, as they sneak past him. The hunter pursues the pair until they're cornered into a shed. As luck would have it, there's a shotgun in the shed, so they shoot the hunter. The pair make it to a shore and ride on a wooden door, slowly drifting across the ocean until they arrive at the Pale City. While going through the abandoned buildings, a TV suddenly turns on. Mono is strangely drawn to the TV, and he somehow tunes the transmission until he's literally sucked into the TV screen. He tries to reach the door at the end of the hall, but Six pulls him out of the TV. Anyhow, Mono and Six make it to a school building. Initially, it looks empty, but further inside, they encounter the bullies, evil little children made of porcelain. A group of bullies ambush the pair, and Six gets dragged away. So Mono continues forward alone and comes across the teacher. Even the bullies, unruly as they can be, are scared shitless of the teacher, and they behave perfectly while in her presence. Mono sneaks around the classrooms, trying to elude the teacher as she uses her very extendable neck to look out for any disturbances. Mono makes it to the kitchen where he fights off a few bullies. Using a bully's head that popped off, he disguises himself and walks past the cafeteria and the hallway undetected. The porcelain head eventually breaks, so Mono fights off the rest of the bullies he comes across. Mono finds Six hanging upside down in the bathroom, so he kills the bullies responsible and cuts her loose. Back together, Mono and Six continue to travel through the school. When they come across a bully who's busy drawing on the floor, Six gets some payback. Six and Mono try to sneak past the teacher as she's practicing the piano, but she spots them. They just barely escape the teacher through an air vent and they make it out of the school. 6 gets a little chilly because of the rain, but she finds a yellow raincoat. Let's just assume that this is the same raincoat from Very Little Nightmares and it's somehow found its way to the Pale City. Anyway, Mono and 6 turn up at a hospital. The hospital's main occupants are the patients, amalgamations of human remains and mannequin parts. Mono and 6 come up against the doctor, the one responsible for treating said patients. Mono and 6 are seen as an intrusion, so the doctor's dead set on catching them. As the doctor chases after them, the pair lure him into an incinerator and burn him alive. 6's reaction to watching him being burned alive is interesting to say the least. So they escape the hospital and continue to traverse the city. They encounter the viewers, residents of the Pale City that have become obsessed with the TVs, or more accurately, the TV's transmission. Mono finds another TV that draws him in, and this time he's able to finally reach the door at the end of the hall. By opening the door, he releases the Thin Man. 6 pulls Mono out of the TV, and shortly after, the Thin Man follows. Six tries to hide, but the Thin Man catches her and takes her away, leaving behind her glitched remains. Mono goes back to the TV, and he discovers he can use it to travel to another TV that's broadcasting the same transmission. With his newfound ability, Mono uses the TVs to travel through the city. He finds 6 trapped in another TV and he tries to pull her out, but the Thin Man pulls her back in. The Thin Man comes out and goes after Mono, slowly but confidently hunting him down. Mono manages to get away from the Thin Man for a bit, but he sees the glitched remains of 6, which pushes him to stand his ground. Near the front of the signal tower, Mono takes off his paper mask and confronts the Thin Man. The two of them face off and we see that their powers are very much alike. Their duel bends the very buildings around them. In the end, Mono is able to overcome the Thin Man, resulting in the latter disintegrating. And so, Mono finally makes it to the signal tower, the source of the transmission. Reality inside the tower seems to go by its own supernatural laws of physics, but he still manages to find his way through. He finds 6, who's turned into a grotesque monstrosity who's become obsessed with her music box. Mono figures out that the music box is responsible for corrupting 6, so he tries to destroy it. 6 fiercely protects her music box. She's more than willing to kill Mono, despite everything they've been through together. But Mono destroys the music box in the end, which does bring 6 back to normal. The fleshy insides of the tower start to cave in, so the two of them start to haul ass. While 6 is well ahead, the path to the exit crumbles, and Mono jumps to grab onto 6's hand. Instead of pulling him back up right away, 6 stares into Mono's face for a bit, and then she lets him go.
You can't! She's gonna let go! What? No! What? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? I just saved you! I just saved you! Tall!
So 6 makes it out of the signal tower, leaving Mono for dead. What the f? Why the f did this just let him go after all the shit they've been through? Glad you asked. We will get to that soon. Mono survives the fall, and he wanders the fleshy mass until he finds a chair. The fleshy walls start to close in, but then the environment reverts back to concrete. So he sits down and submits to his fate. As time passes by, Mono loses his childhood innocence and grows taller until he turns into the Thin Man himself. Hence, the cycle begins anew. The Thin Man waits until he is inevitably freed by his younger self. Back to 6, after exiting the tower, she pops into some room. Her shadow self appears and gestures towards a pamphlet on the floor. The shadow disappears and 6's stomach growls with hunger. The pamphlet seems to be an advertisement for the mall, where Little Nightmares 1 takes place. So that's the end of Little Nightmares 2. Alright, let's talk about why 6 dropped Mono. There's a couple theories floating around, but I want to focus on the 3 I believe to be the most plausible. It's possible that they all contributed to her sudden betrayal. First theory, 6 saw Mono's face up close for the first time. Seeing the resemblance, 6 realized that Mono would eventually grow up to become the Thin Man, hence why she dropped him. Second theory, Mono destroyed 6's music box. Escapism is a pretty big theme in this game. For the viewers, their escape was the TV transmission, and they would quite literally do anything in order to keep watching. Although Mono had good intentions, he took away 6's source of comfort, which made her resent him. Here's a tweet from the official Little Nightmares 2 account that basically validates this theory. I couldn't find the other tweet, but they also mentioned that while in the signal tower, 6's perspective was completely different from the player/Mono's perspective. While Mono was trying to save 6, this is what it could have looked like in her perspective.
Here's Johnny.
Third theory, 6 is a little bitch. In any case, as much as I hate how often this phrase is thrown around, it's really up to your interpretation. Anywhoosies, let's move on to the story of Secrets of the Maw, the DLC expansion pack of Little Nightmares 1. The game takes place in, you guessed it, the Maw, a submersible ship resort that caters to the rich elite. The protagonist of this story is the runaway kid. The kid wakes up in the prison's bedroom and starts his escape. He drops into the depths, where he has to evade an unseen but ever-present threat known as the Granny. She's supposed to look like this. Wow, what a beauty. The Granny is constantly in hot pursuit as the kid goes through the flooded areas. The Granny does eventually show her beautiful face and tries to break the platform the kid is on, but the kid pushes a TV into the water, which electrocutes her. The kid makes it back up, but he gets captured by the janitor. The janitor looks like this, by the way. The kid wakes up in a cage where we catch a brief glimpse at 6 before the kid is dragged away. He gets stuffed into a body bag on a moving hook, but he manages to break free. He falls onto a pile of coals and a few gnomes come to check up on him, but they scurry away when he gets up. The kid is now in the hideaway where he meets a number of gnomes. The gnomes are initially apprehensive, but when the kid embraces them, they quickly warm up to him and follow him around. They're so cute, look at them, they mimic his movements. As the kid goes around, gathering the trust of other gnomes, he makes sure not to catch the janitor's attention, who's evidently blind but has an acute sense of hearing. The gnomes follow the kid to the furnace room where they're inexplicably compelled to start throwing coal into the furnace. When enough gnomes are gathered to feed the furnace, the kid takes the ascent using the transport coals. He passes through a gnome shelter and gets on top of an elevator, unknowingly almost coming into contact with the lady, the proprietress of the mall. The kid arrives at the residence, aka the lady's quarters. The kid sneaks past the lady, who's curiously brushing her hair in front of a broken mirror. As the kid collects the statues needed to proceed to the next area, he encounters the Shadow Kids. The Shadow Kids are very hostile and dangerous, but they can be fought off with the light. The kid finds the last statue, which grants him access to a secret room. Inside, the kid sneaks a peek at the lady unmasked, which she's not too thrilled about. The kid realizes he needs to get the f*** out, but unfortunately, the lady is one step ahead of him. The kid wakes up as a gnome, and he wanders through the guest area. He finds his way to a room where there's a lone sausage on the floor. So he looks at the sausage, and that's it. That's the end of the story. So if you haven't played Little Nightmares 1, you might be wondering, what's the big deal behind this last scene? Well, we'll get to that. So now we have reached the last story in the Little Nightmares timeline, which funny enough, is the first game that came out. The main character of this story is, obviously, 6. The Little Nightmares comics show that 6 was taken to the Maw against her will by the ferryman. But the after credits scene of Little Nightmares 2 seems to indicate that 6 went to the Maw on her own volition. I don't know, but either way, 6 ends up at the Maw. The story starts with 6 having a dream about the lady. She wakes up in a suitcase and begins her journey. As she makes her way through, she comes across a hanged man, which looks a lot like the Thin Man. Probably just a coincidence. 6 shows up at a children's bedroom where she first encounters the janitor. She sneaks past and makes it to a prison cafeteria where she starts to suffer from a crippling bout of hunger. A kid very kindly throws a piece of bread to her, which she devours. And so she continues on her merry way. 6 happens upon a few gnomes throughout her journey, which, like the runaway kid, she can befriend by hugging them. After some time, she's struck with hunger pains again, and she finds a meat in a cage and walks into the very obvious trap. 6 wakes up in a room full of other caged children. She breaks out with relative ease, and she doesn't bother helping out the other children as she makes her way out. The janitor is a constant threat to 6 as she passes through his territory. The janitor eventually corners 6 into a room, but with his arm sticking through, 6 gets the chance to slam the door on him. She leaves the janitor's lair by taking a ride on a meat hook. She lands on a mound of body bags where she's again hit with her chronic hunger. She spots a mouse caught in a trap and eats it. Kinda gross, but girls gotta eat. Six makes it to the kitchen where she encounters the twin chefs. Some of the meat they're preparing is strongly implied to be human meat. The chefs are not very hygienic and their dish handling is questionable at best. The chefs try to hunt down Six, but she narrowly escapes the kitchen on a moving hook. She eventually finds herself at the outer part of the mall where we see a long line of guests making their way inside. Her path takes her back inside the mall and we catch a glimpse of the lady who's overseeing the guests. Six reaches the dining area where the guests are devouring massive amounts of food entirely consisting of various meats. Even with all the food in front of them, the guests are overly fixated on trying to eat Six when she comes into view. A horde of guests amass and clamber after Six, but she manages to get away. Shortly after, Six is once more hit with hunger pains and she finds a gnome who's offering a sausage to her. That's the runaway kid, remember? So, what do you think our heroine decides to do? This bitch. To be fair though, she probably realized that the sausage is made up of human meat, but still though, kinda fucked up. Anyway, Six rides an elevator up to the lady's residence. She sneaks past the lady and grabs a key, after which the lady disappears, for some reason. Six makes her way through the residence and sees that all the mirrors are broken, except for one that's conveniently small enough for her to hold. With the mirror at hand, Six has a showdown with the lady. Turns out that the lady's own reflections cause some serious damage to her. After a couple hits, the lady is staggered and Six is once again overcome with hunger. So she takes a bite. Six absorbs the lady's powers, becoming a little nightmare. Six returns to the dining area, and as the guests try to reach for her, she sucks the life force out of them. The doors to the exit open, and a group of gnomes show up to watch her leave. After the credits roll, we see Six at the deck, presumably waiting for a boat to pick her up. Kinda messed up how the most morally depraved character got the best ending. But anyway, that's it. That was the entire story of Little Nightmares. Thanks for watching, bye bye.